Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. And in this video, we're going to explain the difference, although it seems a little bit minor, of what doing and not doing velocity banking is. So there are some people out there who think, oh, if I just had a HELOC, that's doing velocity banking. And guess what? There are some of you out there who email me your situations. I see that you have a HELOC for, let's say, $50,000, and guess what? It has a $49,000 balance, right? And if you have a $49,000 balance on a $50,000 HELOC and you're paycheck to paycheck, you're probably not doing velocity banking. Because what's the main difference between the average American and someone who does velocity banking? The main difference is what's your main operating account. So, are you using your checking account to pay your bills, or are you using your home equity line of credit if you do have a HELOC, right? That's the only difference. And this is something that I really want to highlight and emphasize, right? So let's go ahead and just redo our budget so that we're doing velocity banking. And one of the things that I really want to emphasize is that whatever you're using as your main operating account, so I'm just going to highlight this right here. Guess what? If this is your main operating account, your payment doesn't matter. This goes to zero. Why is that? Because when you're using velocity banking, right, you're putting your entire paycheck into that line of credit, which does two things. It satisfies the minimum monthly payment and minimizes the interest by reducing the average daily balance. So does this really matter, this payment, if you're putting your entire paycheck in there? Well, it's negligible, but we do have to factor in the interest, obviously, right? And the other thing too is we're having savings. I mean, say we're not having savings, right? So this is going to be zero, and this is very uncomfortable for a lot of people to have zero savings. Like I told my mom that, like, oh, I have zero in my savings account. She freaked out. Like, you need 2 to 3 months of savings. And like, no, I'm good because I have over $248,000 in lines of credit. Right. In fact, I actually applied for a credit limit increase in my little tiny credit cards. I had like a $500 one with Chase. It now it went from 500 to 1,000, but overall I have over $248,000 in lines of credit. Right. So if I need emergencies, guess what? I got my lines of credit available. Okay. Now let's go ahead and calculate the cash flow. It's C2 minus C3, right? And our cash flow has increased just a little bit. Now, for some of you, it might be a huge increase if you have a credit card or a line of credit and you're not using it as your main operating account. Like this could be like a $500 payment if you have enough debt. You put your entire paycheck, guess what? That $500 payment is now part of cash flow, and this is now zero. That's really the main difference of doing velocity banking, not just having a HELOC, right? There are people out there and who have emailed me, they have that HELOC again, and they're not using velocity banking and still paycheck to paycheck. All right. So we're also going to do a few more things. So if we to demonstrate how the main operating account works, we'll say this is a 10% interest rate. We'll say this has a 17 grand limit, and we have 15 grand balance, right? So 15 grand, and we'll say this is 1 0. And in this case, we'll say the interest is already included, so we're not going to include it here just to make it easier on me. But let's just do this. So in this situation, if we can transfer some debt to that line of credit because there's 17,000, I'd say go for it, right? Like, why not? Okay. So let's go ahead and transfer some of this debt. So as you can see, I kind of pre-wrote it here. We'll move $2,000 here. So this is going to be 17 grand. Okay. And now we got to figure out the new credit card payment. Let's go ahead and do that. So bank rate, CC payment, right? You could use a minimum payment calculator. And now if we have a $5,000 credit card, that's now $3,000. What's our new cash flow? So $3,000, and at, what was the percentage rate? 30%. I've actually been credit card hunting, and I've seen like some credit unions charging only like 11, 12%. It's pretty crazy. All right, so now this is 105, right? So now we've increased our cash flow a little bit more just by simply transferring some debt. And here's the thing, I know some of these calculations are going to be unrealistic, right? Because every time you make a credit card payment, your cash flow actually goes up, right? So if you take a look here at this payment schedule, right, you'll see that the minimum payment goes down after every single payment, right? So the cash flow does go up, but we'll just assume that the cash flow is constant, or the payment is constant to the credit cards. Okay, but it's 105, and then now it's 7,000. Okay, so now let's go ahead and recalculate or pay some of this off. Now, realistically, in real life, I would just make sure that this is always 17,000 and I'm transferring as much as possible to that credit line. But just to make the demonstration a little bit easier, I'm gonna not do that and I'll just transfer it when there's clearly enough room in the credit line to transfer a significant amount. So let's go ahead and do this. So the next balance is the previous balance plus the interest, whoopsie, H2 minus our cash flow, which is 1961, okay, 1961.67. And if you don't know where I got that from here. Okay, so we're going to calculate our interest. That's our cost of using the line of credit, which is the average daily balance multiplied by the interest rate, which is 0.1, and then divide by 12. Okay? All right. So now what we can do is, I think if we make one more payment, we could probably move the entire $3,000 into here, right? So again, this is not going to be $3,000. It's going to be close, I think, plus 3,000, right? And then guess what? At this point, this becomes 0. Okay? Isn't that crazy? Now what we have to do is just keep making payments so that we can move the other $7,000 here. Like I said, I'm probably gonna just fill this to the brim in real life, but just to make this easier to understand, let me actually put in our new cash flow here, which is 2066.67. You can see this right here, our new cash flow, right? And then just pay it down to the point where I could move, move 7K. And it's not even going to be 7K at that point, probably a little bit less. Yeah, so let's just put in. So after 5 payments, let me just do this. 7K to 28%. 7,000 to 28, right? And calculate. So after 7 payments, what's the balance? 6.5 grand, right? So can we move 6.5 grand here? And let's just check. Well, actually, this is after 6 payments. Whatever. We'll just see. It'll be close enough. Yeah, so it's just as long as it's under that 16,000, we should be fine. And then guess what? This goes to 0, right? And then now what we got to do is calculate our new cash flow. And then actually, let me highlight every time we moved a payment here or a significant amount of debt. And so now this is our new cash flow, 26.7, and our new cash flow right here is 2,300. Wow. Okay. Bam. Right? And now we just kind of set this sucker to 0, or right? So we just copy and paste, and then you can see after 13 months we paid off all that debt, right? So let's just go ahead and put some milestones here. Milestones. So this will be 5, 7, 15. So this is going to be 12 plus 15 is 27K of debt in about 13 months. Okay, so that's all 3 debts. And now what we can do is just essentially go for the mortgage, right? And so at this point, very little of the mortgage will have been paid off. And we'll just assume this is a brand new mortgage, right? So what we do is we just go here and go to $200,000. I already put in the calculator, and you can see only $3,000 about of the principal was paid off because we pay all this interest in the beginning, right? So if you don't know how mortgage amortization schedules work, there's a formula that they have which is really complicated that gives you a low monthly payment, and then what they do is they calculate the interest and then subtract that payment with the interest, and that's what the principal that gets applied. All right, so now let's go ahead and do this right here. And at this stage, right? Whoopsie, that's crazy. What's that going on? All right, so let me. Did this go nuts? Yeah, I think this. Hold on. Let me go ahead and copy this. All right, now it looks correct. Okay, so now at this stage, we only paid off 3. This is the very last debt that we paid. And in general, the mortgage is the one you want to pay off last. There's a debt criteria payoff. I'm not going to explain it here, but just be aware once you get to the mortgage, you could do 2 things. Just apply your your savings, if this is going to be what you're going to do, to the mortgage directly. Now, even though this is the default option that most Americans have, they're not going to do it, right? Or again, just transfer your principal to the HELOC and then just pay it off with your paycheck, and then it'll go down. And it's like, what's the difference between that? The difference, only difference at that point, is that you're just going to prevent segregation of income, right? Segregation of income, and you can you have liquidity, right? So that's really the only difference. Now at this stage, again, if you want to put in your savings, go ahead, and that'll be an incredible benefit. I just couldn't do that because I'm not that disciplined to put my entire savings into a loan. If that makes sense. But yeah, so if you don't know what I mean by that, but let's just say that we move $5,000 into that line of credit. So this would be like 195. Okay, and then was it 195? No, it's going to be 192. And I would just say, just do small amounts that are either 1 or 2 months of pay, and the result will be similar because the only thing that really matters is your cash flow at that point. So plus 5000. Wow, is our cash flow so significant that even doing $5,000 chunk is not gonna? It probably won't. So let's just do $10,000 chunk. So we have so much cash flow that it's insane. All right, so now we're gonna do this 190. So 187. Let's just do that and see how long it takes us to pay off $10,000. So plus 10,000, right? So, or did I do this wrong? Maybe I did this wrong. Okay, but you see that if we pay off $10,000, it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, right? So now let's just compare this to the amortization schedule. So how long does it take to get to 197 to 187? So 197 is right here at the year two. Actually, let me take a look at this. 197 after about year one, and then 187 takes us 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 years, whereas it took us about 5 months to do it, and probably a little bit quicker too, because we didn't take into account the payment that comes out every time we're doing it. But yeah, you can see that we paid off really quickly. Now let's just go ahead and do this. We have a cheat sheet calculator from Renatus. I'm a Renatus student. I'm actually independent contractor marketer, and all that means is that I make commissions from selling Renatus products. But this is where I originally learned velocity banking from. So I'm just going to put $200,000 right here. And if you're a Renata student, you can get this cheat sheet too. All right, so now let's go ahead and put 197, okay, because that's the balance after 13 months. And let's go ahead and put that here. All right, so now the current balance at that time, interest rate is 6. I think 1200 is our payment. And actually, to be more exact, it's 1199.1, but whatever. All right. So now our chunk amount, we could, I'll actually play around with this right now in front of you just to see what the difference is. It's really not that significant, if just as long as you don't put the whole thing. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. But let me put in my income. So it'll be $5,000. What's our expenses? Will be everything except for the loan we're going to pay off. So 1,500 sounds right. And let's just do this. So let's say I replace the entire mortgage, and I don't actually want to do that. So 197,332.6. You'll see that even though the payoff is great and we do save some interest, look at this, $71,000 of interest, right? So we want to just kind of do incremental payoffs, especially because we're doing from a low interest rate loan to a higher interest rate line of credit. But if we just do something like $10,000, you'll notice that the interest is halved, right? And the payoff is actually quicker, right? But let me see. Let me just play around with this. So if I do 5,000, is there? I'm guessing the interest will go down a little bit lower. I don't know if the payoff will be quicker, but let's do 5,000. Okay. So 5,000 here. Yeah. So again, whether it's 5,000 or $10,000 chunks, it's not going to really matter, right? But you kind of see here that the payoff years didn't even increase, but this went slightly down for the $5,000 chunk. So I'm just going to use $10,000. Yeah, and it just the interest went down $1,000, and it makes sense because you're holding more money into the line of credit in a higher interest. So even though your cash flow is high, it's going to take that into account. But that's why I say, like, in reality, whether you do say direct savings or this, it's not going to matter. The only benefit that at this stage is just what's it called? Uh, Preventing segregation of income, right? And that's the reason why most six-figure people are broke. But let's just go back here. So now we just go 5.6 years. So what's 27 months if we put into years? 2.25. So 2.25 plus, right? Plus 5.6. 5.6 years. Okay. So 5.6. That's 7.85 years. Oh, and how much did we pay off? So let me I screwed this up. All right, so now we basically paid off $227,000 in 7.85 years. Woohoo! Right? So let's go ahead and highlight that victory. And what was it again? Just to reemphasize what the difference between velocity banking versus the average American, the main difference is what's your main operating account. Having a HELOC is not velocity banking because you're going to do something called segregation of income and just have your paycheck making minimum payments to everything versus putting your entire paycheck sorry, into one place, right? All right, well, that's it for today. If you're interested in joining our group and learning not only about velocity banking, but all this other cool stuff like buying real estate at a discount and other topics that I can't think of at the top of the moment, go ahead and click the Google form link below. Other than that, have a great day, and we'll speak next time.